This is lecture number 14, and in this lecture we will continue chapter reproduction. Today we will discuss the necessities or requirements of sexual reproduction. Gametogenesis, mating and fertilization. All these are required to perform or occurrence of the sexual reproduction depends on all these three processes. We will discuss it one by one. Gametogenesis, as its name shows, it is the process of formation of gametes or sex cells, right? The sex cells are called as gametes. The process of formation of sex cells or gametes is called as gametogenesis. Gametogenesis takes place where? In specialized reproductive organs which are called as gonads. Yes, remember, gametogenesis takes place in gonads, and obviously male and female both have the gonads. So the male gonads are called as testes, while the female gonads are called as ovaries. So the gametes which are formed by testes or male gonads are called as sperms, while the female gametes which are produced by ovaries are called as ova or eggs. Gametes are derived from a special type of cells which are called as germ cells. Remember, in our body or animal body there are two types of cells, germ cells and somatic cells. The germ cells are responsible to produce the sex cells or gametes in our body only, while the rest of all the organs, all the body parts are made up of somatic cells. Gametogenesis is of two types, spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Remember that gametes are always haploid, right? Haploid means the number of chromosomes will be half in that gamete as compared to the species total number of chromosomes, right? Normally the cells have diploid chromosomes, which means the total number of chromosomes, but the gametes are the cells which have haploid number of chromosomes, which means half the number of species total number of chromosomes. Remember that. Spermatogenesis, as its name shows, spermatogenesis, formation of sperms. Remember, spermatogenesis is formation of sperms. How this process occurs? Simply, the spermatogonium or spermatogonia, after passing through different mitotic divisions, generation after generation, it converts into primary spermatocyte. Remember, spermatogonia will be converted into primary spermatocyte, right? And this here, the process is mitosis, but the primary spermatocyte will divide and form secondary spermatocytes by the help of meiosis. You remember the process of meiosis is reduction division. I hope you remember. In meiosis, the number of chromosomes becomes half, right? That's why it is called as reduction division. So the spermatogonium, which have total number of chromosome, and it converts after the process of mitosis. As you remember, the mitosis is the division in which two or more daughter cells are formed with equal number of chromosomes as in the parent cell. So you can see right here, the spermatogonium have the same number of chromosomes and the primary spermatocytes also have the same number of chromosomes. But when it passes through the meiosis and forms the secondary spermatocyte, the number of chromosomes becomes half. Here you can see 4, here you can see 2, 2 here and 2 here, right? So after the formation of secondary spermatocytes, it undergoes the meiosis 2, the second division, meiosis 2, and forms spermatids. Spermatids are formed, which further develops and forms mature sperm cells with haploid number of chromosomes, half number of chromosomes. Very simple process, very easy to learn. Spermatogonia or spermatogonium develops into primary spermatocytes by the help of mitosis, and after passing through the meiosis, it converts into secondary spermatocytes, then spermatids, and then the mature sperm cells. Remember the sequence so that you don't get confused, or in MCQs you have to give the right answer. Right, the first stage is spermatogonia, then second primary spermatocyte will form, then secondary spermatocytes will form, then spermatids, and after spermatids it will convert into mature sperm cells. Similarly, in oogenesis, that is the process of formation of eggs or ovum. Same process here. You can see oogonia with total number of chromosomes. After passing through the mitotic divisions, it converts and grows into primary oocyte right here with the same number of chromosomes. But when it passes through the meiosis, unlike the spermatocytes, it converts only into a single secondary oocyte. The primary oocyte will convert into single secondary oocyte and a polar body right here. This is the polar body or primary polar body, because it is the first polar body which is formed in the oogenesis. That's why it is named as primary polar body, right? So the primary oocyte, it divides into single secondary oocyte and a primary polar body. Then after passing through the meiosis too, remember the meiosis is the reduction division, so the number of chromosomes become half. And after passing through the meiosis too, the secondary oocyte further divides to form the ovum. Secondary oocyte further divides to form ovum and another polar body right here. This secondary oocyte, similarly, just like here, the primary oocyte divides to form secondary oocyte and primary polar body. The secondary oocyte divides to form the ovum and another polar body. And this polar body simply divides to form two more polar bodies, which are called as secondary polar bodies. These three are collectively called as secondary polar bodies. So overall there are three polar bodies formed and a single ovum is developed in oogenesis, while in spermatogenesis a lot of sperms are formed by the help of spermatogenesis. Remember that this is the huge difference between the two processes. These polar bodies are non-functional and they disintegrate in the further process. Now the mating and fertilization. Mating is simply the process by which the male and female contribute their gametes or sex cells, right? For the process of fertilization, the fusion of the gametes. What is fertilization? The fusion of male and female gametes to form a diploid zygote. Remember that when the male and female gamete fuses, it forms a zygote, and as the male and female gametes have haploid number of chromosomes, but when they fuse together, automatically they will have the diploid number of chromosomes, right? The zygote further develops into an offspring. It can develop either inside the body of the female, like mostly in mammals, or outside the body as well, like we observe in fishes and amphibians, like frog. There are two types of fertilizations: external fertilization and internal fertilization. As its name shows, the external fertilization means the fusion of male and female gamete is taking place outside of the body of the female, right? In aquatic medium, which is normally or mostly water. Remember that external fertilization cannot take place without water. Example, external fertilization is normally observed in lower animals and in most of the fishes and amphibians, as well as they are aquatic animals. And amphibians require water to reproduce. Internal fertilization, when the fusion of male and female gametes takes place within the body of the female, then it is called as internal fertilization. Internal fertilization increases the chances of fertilization, right? Why? Because the egg remains inside of the body of the female, which gives more protection, more nutrition. That's why the animals which have internal fertilization, they produce less number of eggs as compared to the animals which undergo the external fertilization. right? The example of internal fertilization, all the terrestrial animals and many aquatic species also. Now, what are unisexual animals and bisexual animals? Unisexual animals, those animals which have distinct gender, like either they will be a male or a female. They have only one type of gonad, either male or female. And they are also this type of animals are called as unisexual, and also called as dioecious or heterophrodite. Remember, dioecious, unisexual, heterophrodite is the same term given to the animals which have distinct gender or sex, which have either a male or a female gonad in their body. While the bisexual animals, those animals which have both male and female gonads within an individual, right? And it is commonly observed in invertebrates like worms and parasites. So the bisexual animals are those which have both male and female gonad within their body, within a single individual, and it is also called as monoecious or hermaphrodite. This is an overview just to give you a view of female reproductive system, the parts of female reproductive system. This whole topic is reduced in your syllabus, but I have added this picture so that you can see the structure of ovary right here and uterus, because we need to study the female reproductive cycles in further slide. So you should know where is the uterus and how it looks like, and this is the ovary. This layer right here, the internal layer, it is called as endometrium right here, right? And the external layer of the uterus is called as myometrium. This endometrium is very important because whole of the menstrual cycle depends on this layer. Now, female reproductive cycles, ostrich cycle. Normally, in different animals, during their breeding season, the female, under the influence of hormonal secretion, shows different behavioral changes, right? And these changes indicates their readiness for mating, or you can say the availability of the mature eggs for fertilization. And in some mammals, the ostrich cycle or the readiness of the female for mating or availability of the mature eggs for fertilization can be once a year, or in some others there could be twice a year, and some may have more often. While in humans, the human females do not undergo the ostrich cycle. Instead of the ostrich cycle, the reproductive cycle in human female is brought about by ovarian cycle and menstrual cycle, obviously, which are under control of hormones. We will discuss these two cycles in detail in this diagram, by the help of this diagram. This is very important diagram as it explains both the cycles in single diagram, and with the in addition to this, it also gives the hormones which are involved in these cycles. Okay, ovarian cycle, obviously the cycle by which one egg is released from an ovary, either alternate ovary right or left, in about every 28 days, right? While the menstrual cycle is consist of uterine and ovarian cycle. Collectively, the ovarian cycle and changes occurring in the uterus, the maturation of the ovum, that is ovarian changes which are occurring in ovary, and the changes which are occurring in uterus to prepare it for any possible pregnancy. Remember, the changes occur in uterus is for preparation of the uterus for possible pregnancy during the whole cycle. So collectively, the uterine cycle that is occurring in uterus and the ovarian cycle which occurs in ovary is collectively called as menstrual cycle, right? Okay, menstrual cycle, or the sexual maturity, you can say it occurs in early teen years of the females, right? And like age of 13 or 14 years, while when they reaches to the age of 50 years, it stops, which is called as menopause. Now I will explain this diagram. This is hypothalamus, remember, the part of brain which influence the pituitary gland right here. Remember, hypothalamus influences the pituitary. This gland is responsible for secretion of many hormones, which we will study right here. This is the endometrium, the layer, internal layer of uterus. This structure shows the endometrium or internal structure of the uterus. And in these boxes, you can see how the ovum is produced and how it is released, and after the release of the ovum, what will happen. So let's start from day 1. This right here, you can see a M, F, O, L and M. These are basically the phases of menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle of human female is consist of 4 phases. M stands for menstruation phase. Right here, M stands for menstruation phase. F stands for follicle phase. And here the O stands for ovulation phase. O stands for ovulation phase. As its name shows, it is the formation of ovum or release of ovum. Follicle phase, the formation of follicle. And the L shows the corpus luteum phase. Corpus luteum phase. Again, there is another M is written, which shows the menstruation phase again. So there are total 4 phases which are involved in menstrual cycle. M, menstruation phase, follicle phase, ovulation phase and corpus luteum phase. So here you can see day 1 to 5, and here after day 28 till 5. This is the menstruation phase during which the bleeding occurs, right? But after the day 5, what happens? The hypothalamus secretes its secretions, right, which influence the pituitary gland here and its secretions also, right? And this pituitary gland secretes FSH and LH. Remember, follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. We have studied all these hormones in very detail in the last second last lecture, right? So when the pituitary releases FSH and LH, what it do? This follicle, the follicle which is produced in the process of oogenesis. Remember, oogenesis, which is the process which forms the ovum, right? The ovum of the human female is enclosed in a follicle, which is normally called as Graafian follicle. This follicle here, you can see a circular structure, right? In this follicle present the ovum. This is the ovum, right? So as the FSH and LH is secreted from pituitary, what happens? The primary estrogen secretion starts. This is the female hormone. Primary estrogen secretion starts, right? And here you can see during the follicle phase, the membrane start developing again. Here you can see the development and increases increase in the thickness of the wall right here in this time. Then the pituitary also maintains or increase or decrease these 2 hormones. As the luteinizing hormone increases and FSH decreases, the follicle stimulating, as the follicle is formed, right, we don't need FSH anymore. So the pituitary will decrease FSH and increases the LH, so that this follicle ruptures and this ovum release from that follicle, right? Ovum is released, and here you can see during the ovulation phase, the days are 13, 14, 15, which means this phase is very short in period, and only 3 days. It depends on only 3 days when the ovum is released from the follicle, right? And as the ovum releases, what happens? This ruptured follicle converts into corpus luteum, a structure which is called as corpus luteum. And with that, the phase which in start is called as corpus luteum phase. As the follicle converts into corpus luteum, this phase is called as corpus luteum phase. And here what happening in the uterus, the walls are thickening and forming, right? Now they are at their fullest right here when the corpus luteum phase is going on. Then the pituitary secretes the LTH, another hormone, right? Another hormone is secreted which is called as LTH. This LTH basically stimulates the progesterone secretion. Here you can see I have written primary progesterone secretion, right, which is another hormone. We have studied it in detail. Then what happens if the egg which is released right here, if it got fertilizes or pregnancy happens, then what will happen? This progesterone which is secreted under the influence of LTH, it will form placenta, right, for the support and nutrition provided to the fetus. And if the eggs do not fertilized, what happen? Then this corpus luteum breaks down, right? And why it breaks down, it is not still established. The scientists could not find it out why the if the pregnancy not happens, then why this corpus luteum disintegrate or breaks down, right? And during this stage again, as it breaks down, the menstruation starts on the day 28, right? And obviously with the breakdown of the corpus luteum, the progesterone secretion will be decreased, right? So here are the days, the phases, and what is happening in the ovary and in uterus. You can study from this diagram. Okay, let me tell you another important thing, that the hypothalamic secretions, they are influencing the pituitary secretion, which ultimately influence the ovarian changes right here in the ovary. And these ovarian changes basically are influencing the uterine changes which are occurring in uterus. Thank you.